Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, not in a modern bedroom, with the quiet hum of a refrigerator somewhere in the house, the faint glow of a charger beside your bed, and the distant sound of traffic moving through the streets. Imagine, instead, that you open your eyes in the year 1287. There is no electricity, no streetlight outside the window, no clock glowing in the darkness, no glass tower somewhere beyond the rooftops, only darkness, and somewhere outside, a dog begins to bark. You lie still for a moment. The room is cold. The fire that kept the house warm during the evening has almost gone out. A few pieces of charcoal still glow beneath the ashes, giving off just enough light to reveal the rough wooden beams above your head. You can hear the wind. It moves through the narrow streets outside, slipping between houses that lean toward one another, as though they are tired from standing for too many years. You hear footsteps. Someone is walking through the street slowly. Then the footsteps disappear. For a moment, everything becomes silent again. This is the medieval world. And perhaps the strangest thing about it is that people who lived here did not think their lives were strange at all. They did not wake up every morning and think, I am living in the Middle Ages. To them, this was simply life. They worried about food. They worried about money. They worried about the weather. They worried about their children. They worried about their neighbors. They fell in love. They argued. They laughed. They became jealous. They got tired after a long day of work. And when night finally came, they went home, sat beside the fire, listened to stories, and eventually closed their eyes. Tonight, we are going to follow them. Not the kings, not the famous knights, not the great conquerors whose names survived in history books. Instead, we are going to spend a quiet day with the people who made up most of the medieval world. The farmer, the baker, the blacksmith, the merchant, the servant, the monk, the young woman carrying a basket through the market, the old man sitting beside the fire, and the child who has been told, for the third time that evening, to stop playing and go to sleep. Because if you want to understand the Middle Ages, you cannot only look at castles, you have to look inside the houses. You have to listen to the streets. You have to smell the smoke. You have to feel the mud beneath your shoes. You have to imagine what it was like to live in a world where almost everything you owned had been made by someone's hands. And most importantly, you have to slow down. So, for the next little while, forget the modern world. Let the lights disappear. Let the noise fade. And imagine that you are standing outside a medieval town just before sunrise. The year is somewhere around the late 13th century. The exact year does not matter. The town could be in England. It could be in northern France. It could be somewhere along the great trade routes of Europe. The details would change from place to place, but many of the sounds would be familiar. Rooster, a wooden cart, a distant bell, a door opening, someone coughing, a horse stamping its hoof against the ground. The medieval day is beginning, and nobody is in a hurry yet. The sky is still dark when the first bell rings. It does not sound like a modern alarm. There is no gentle melody. There is simply a deep metallic sound spreading across the town. Once, then again, then again. The sound travels farther than the people who created it can see. It passes over rooftops, over gardens, over workshops, over sleeping houses. Some people hear it and turn over in their beds. Others are already awake. A baker has been working for hours. His oven needs time to heat. He has risen, while most of the town was still sleeping, because bread cannot simply appear when people decide they want it. The dough has to be prepared, the fire has to be built, the oven has to become hot enough, and by the time the first customers arrive, the bread must already be waiting. The baker opens the door of his workshop. Warm air escapes into the cold street. For a moment, the smell of fresh bread is stronger than the smell of smoke and mud. A man passing outside slows down. He is carrying an empty basket. He looks through the doorway. The baker notices him. "Not yet," he says. The man smiles. "I know." He continues walking. He will return later. For now, the bread is still being baked. This is one of the things that is easy to forget when looking at history. People had routines, very ordinary routines. The same people often walked the same streets every day. The same baker opened the same door. The same blacksmith lit the same forge. The same woman might stand at the same market stall. The same children might play in the same alley. A medieval town was not simply a collection of buildings. It was a collection of habits. And habits are one of the things that make a place feel like home. You begin walking. The road is uneven. If it has rained recently, the ground is soft and muddy. You have to watch where you place your feet. There are no smooth, modern sidewalks, no painted crossings, no cars waiting impatiently at intersections. The street belongs to pedestrians, animals, carts, and anyone brave enough to navigate it. A horse walks past. Its breath is visible in the morning air. The man leading it says something quietly. You do not understand every word. The language sounds different from modern English. Even the names of familiar objects may sound strange. But the meaning of the morning is easy to understand. People are beginning their work. A woman opens the shutters of her house. She looks toward the sky. She wants to know what kind of day is coming. For someone living in the medieval world, weather is not simply a subject for conversation. Weather can determine whether a family eats well. A dry summer can destroy a harvest. Too much rain can ruin grain. A harsh winter can kill animals. A late frost can destroy fruit. There is no supermarket where a family can simply buy food from another country when the local harvest fails. The weather is personal. The weather is economic. The weather can decide the future. So people look at the sky. They always have. As the sun begins to rise, the town changes. The darkness slowly turns gray. The roofs become visible. Smoke rises from chimneys. Somewhere, a door slams. A child begins crying. A woman calls for someone inside the house. A dog runs across the street. The town is waking, and now you begin to notice something else. The smell, wood smoke, bread, horse manure, wet earth, cooking meat, ale, human sweat, leather, iron. The medieval world had a very strong smell. There was no modern sanitation system carrying waste away underground. There were no deodorants, no washing machines, no chemical cleaners in every home. People washed, of course, some more often than others. Bathing existed, soap existed, but cleanliness depended on water, fuel, time, money, and local customs. And water was not always convenient. In some towns, people collected it from wells. In others, they carried it from rivers or streams. That meant water itself had to be transported. Someone had to carry it, and that someone was often a woman or child. A bucket filled with water is heavy. A full wooden bucket can change the rhythm of an entire morning. You cannot simply turn a tap. You have to walk, fill the bucket, carry it home, and perhaps do it again, and again, and again. This is one of the quiet differences between medieval life and modern life. Modern civilization has hidden enormous amounts of physical labor from us. We open a tap, water appears. We press a button, clothes are washed. We turn a knob, the room becomes warm. We open a refrigerator, food is waiting. For a medieval family, many of these things required time, and time was expensive. Inside one small house, a family is preparing breakfast. The room is not large. There may be only one main living space. The family sleeps here. They eat here. They work here. They talk here. The fire is at the center of life. A pot hangs above it. Something is cooking slowly. Perhaps porridge, perhaps beans, perhaps a little meat left from the previous day. The food depends heavily on wealth. A wealthy household eats differently from a poor household. A noble family has access to more meat, spices, wine, imported goods, and expensive ingredients. A peasant family depends far more on grains, vegetables, dairy products, beans, and whatever can be produced locally. And even this picture is more complicated than the old image of medieval people eating nothing but bread and soup. People ate many different foods. They ate according to region, season, religion, wealth, and opportunity. A fisherman living near the sea had different possibilities. From a farmer living hundreds of miles inland, a merchant in a prosperous city could taste spices from distant lands. A poor laborer might never see those spices except as something mentioned by someone richer. Food was geography. Food was class. Food was season. And food was memory. The family eats. Nobody is watching television. Nobody is checking a phone. Nobody is reading messages. The meal is smaller than many modern breakfasts. But the family is together. Someone talks. Someone complains. Someone laughs. The youngest child is not eating quickly enough. His mother tells him to finish. He looks toward the door. He wants to go outside. There are other children waiting. They have already decided what they are going to do. Perhaps they will race through the streets. Perhaps they will play with a wooden toy. Perhaps they will simply follow older children and imitate whatever they are doing. Children in the Middle Ages were still children. This is another thing worth remembering. They did not behave like miniature adults all the time. They played. They invented games. They teased one another. They got into trouble. They became frightened. They asked questions. They were curious. They dreamed. The world around them may have been very different, but childhood itself was not entirely different. A child sees a cart and wants to climb on it. A child sees a puddle and wants to step into it. A child hears an adult whisper something and immediately wants to know what was said. Some things do not change very much. Outside, the market is beginning to form. This is where the town becomes loud. Merchants arrive. Farmers bring produce. Craftsmen bring their work. People call out prices. Animals make noise. Children run between adults. A woman is arguing over the price of eggs. A man is trying to sell cloth. Someone has brought fish. Someone else has brought onions. A butcher is preparing meat. The smell of cooking begins to mix with the smell of the street. The market is not only a place to buy things, it is the town's information network. This is where people hear news. A merchant who arrived yesterday may know something that happened 20 miles away. A traveler may have heard that a bridge is damaged. Someone may know that a nobleman has died. Someone else may have heard rumors about a war. Another person may claim that a strange light was seen in the sky. Most information travels by mouth, and that makes rumors powerful. Imagine a world without newspapers arriving every morning, without television, without the internet, without social media. If something important happens far away, you might not know about it for weeks. And when the news finally arrives, it has probably passed through many people. A traveler tells a merchant. The merchant tells a customer. The customer tells a neighbor. The neighbor tells her sister. By the evening, the original story may have changed completely. That is how medieval news traveled. Slowly, personally, and often inaccurately. One man in the market is telling a story. He has traveled from another town. He says there was trouble on the road. A group of armed men stopped travelers. Someone asks whether they were robbers. The traveler shrugs. Perhaps. Another person asks whether the local lord knows. The traveler laughs. The lord knows everything. Someone nearby says, "Then why hasn't he done anything?" The group laughs. For a moment, the medieval world feels surprisingly familiar. People complain about powerful people. People tell jokes. People gossip. People exaggerate. People pretend to know more than they actually know. Human nature does not change simply because the buildings are older. Now imagine walking beyond the market. The town begins to change. The streets become narrower. Houses lean closer together. Some buildings have upper floors that extend over the street. Timber frames create patterns across walls. Windows are small. Glass is expensive. Many homes use wooden shutters. If the weather is cold, the shutters stay closed. Inside, the world becomes dark. Candles exist, but candles cost money. Wax candles are expensive. Cheaper candles can be made from animal fat. They smell, they smoke. They do not produce the clean, bright light we are used to. So darkness is a real part of medieval life. After sunset, the world changes. A room that feels ordinary during the day can become almost completely dark at night. And this affects how people spend their evenings. There is less artificial light. Less work can be done. Reading is harder. Writing is harder. Travel becomes dangerous. People gather near fires. They talk. They tell stories. They sing. They pray. They drink. They sleep. Night is not simply the time between 2 days. Night is a different world. Perhaps this is why stories mattered so much. A story could turn a dark room into another place. A storyteller could take a group of tired people from a cold village and carry them across mountains, into kingdoms, into forests, into battles, into romances, into legends. The storyteller did not need a screen. He needed only a voice and an audience. Sometimes that is enough. Tonight, we are going to do something similar. We are going to let the voice carry us backward, not toward a famous battlefield, not toward the throne room of a king, but toward an ordinary evening. Because ordinary evenings are where history becomes human. The sun is now high above the town. Work is underway. In a blacksmith's workshop, the air is hot. The blacksmith holds a piece of iron. He places it into the fire. The metal begins to glow. He waits. Then he pulls it out. The hammer comes down. Once, twice, again. The sound travels through the workshop. It is loud enough that conversation becomes difficult. The blacksmith does not need modern machinery to understand the material in his hands. He knows the color of hot iron. He knows when it is ready. He knows how hard to strike. He knows when to put it back into the fire. His knowledge is practical. It lives in his hands. This is another thing that defined medieval life. Skills were often passed directly from one person to another. A father taught a son. A master taught an apprentice. A mother taught a daughter. A craft was learned through observation, repetition, mistakes, and patience. There were no online tutorials, no instruction manual, no search engine. If you wanted to learn how to make a shoe, you had to find someone who knew. Then you watched, and practiced, and failed, and tried again. The apprentice might spend years learning. At first, he does the simplest jobs: cleaning, carrying, preparing materials, watching. Slowly, he is trusted with more. Eventually, he may become a skilled craftsman himself. The process is slow, but the result is knowledge that has been tested by generations. Across the street, a woman is sewing. Her hands move quickly. She has done this many times. Clothing is valuable. A torn shirt cannot simply be thrown away and replaced with something new. Fabric represents time. Someone had to grow the material, harvest it, process it, spin it, weave it, dye it, cut it, sew it. So clothing is repaired, again and again and again. A patch on a sleeve is not necessarily embarrassing. It may simply mean that the garment is still useful. The medieval world is a world of repair. Broken things are often fixed. Old things are reused. Wood becomes something else. Cloth becomes something else. Metal is melted and reshaped. Nothing is wasted easily. This is partly because resources are limited, and partly because almost everything has a human cost. When you know how much work went into making something, you are less likely to throw it away. At noon, the town becomes brighter. The bells ring again. People stop for a moment. Some pray. Some continue working. Others sit down to eat. The meal is often simple: bread, cheese, vegetables, perhaps meat, perhaps fish, perhaps a little ale. Water is not always the preferred drink, depending on the quality of local supplies, and fermented drinks, such as ale, were common in many parts of Europe. But the idea that medieval people were constantly drunk is another exaggeration. People had work to do. They needed to function. A worker cannot spend the entire day stumbling through the street. Even in the Middle Ages, ordinary people understood the difference between drinking and becoming useless. The meal ends. Work begins again, and slowly, the afternoon passes. Beyond the town, the fields are alive with movement. This is where most medieval people spend much of their lives. Not in castles, not in churches, in fields. Farming dominates the economy, and farming is exhausting. A farmer wakes early. He works with animals. He works with tools. He works according to seasons. There is no certainty that the harvest will be good. The soil may be poor. Rain may arrive at the wrong time. Drought may come. Pests may destroy crops. Disease may affect animals. War may interrupt trade. A lord may demand payments. A family may have too few workers because someone is sick. Everything is connected. A single bad season can become a serious problem. 2 bad seasons can become a disaster. This is why the medieval imagination is filled with harvests, hunger, weather, saints, prayers, omens, and fears. When your survival depends so directly on nature, nature becomes part of everyday thought. The sky matters. The moon matters. The rain matters. The first frost matters. The return of spring matters. And yet, despite all of this uncertainty, people made plans. They married. They had children. They built houses. They planted trees that they might never live long enough to see fully mature. They started businesses. They made tools. They repaired roofs. They planted crops for the next year. They believed tomorrow would come. This may be one of the most beautiful things about ordinary medieval life. People lived with uncertainty, but they still built futures. A man might plant an apple tree, knowing that it could take years before it produced much fruit. Why plant it? Because someone might enjoy the fruit later. Perhaps his children. Perhaps his grandchildren. History is full of these quiet decisions. People making things for people they would never meet. As afternoon becomes evening, the town begins to slow. The market closes. Stalls disappear. Unsold vegetables are carried home. Animals are led back. Tools are put away. The blacksmith's fire becomes smaller. The baker has sold most of his bread. The streets are still busy, but the energy has changed. People are going home. A woman carries a basket. A man carries wood. A child runs beside him. Someone is calling from a doorway. A dog follows a family down the street. The sun is lower now. Shadows stretch across the walls. And for the first time all day, you notice how quickly darkness will arrive. Inside one house, the evening meal is being prepared. The fire is brighter now. The room is warm. A pot hangs over the flames. Someone is cutting bread. Someone is pouring ale. The family sits together. Outside, the temperature is dropping. Inside, the fire becomes the center of the world. This is where stories begin. Perhaps someone talks about a traveler. Perhaps someone tells a joke. Perhaps an older person remembers something that happened many years ago. Maybe there is a story about a king. Maybe there is a story about a saint. Maybe there is a story about a ghost. Maybe there is a story about a neighboring village. Or perhaps there is simply gossip. Who married whom? Who owes money? Who is expecting a child? Who behaved badly at the market? Who has returned from the road? Who has left? These small conversations are rarely recorded by historians, and yet they were probably the conversations that filled most medieval evenings. History tends to preserve extraordinary events. Ordinary life disappears. We know the names of kings. We know when armies fought. We know when castles were built. But we rarely know what a baker said to his wife after dinner on a cold Tuesday night. And that is a shame, because that ordinary conversation was someone's entire world. Now, imagine sitting beside them. The fire cracks. A piece of wood shifts. Everyone becomes quiet for a moment. Someone adds another log. The flames rise. The room becomes warmer. Outside, the town is becoming darker. The last merchants have gone home. The streets are quieter. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings. You look toward the small window. There is almost nothing to see, only darkness. This is the medieval night, and it is much darker than ours. For modern people, darkness is rarely complete. Even in a quiet town, there are streetlights. There are windows glowing, cars passing, signs illuminated, buildings lit from within. The horizon may carry the faint glow of a city, but in a medieval town, once the sun disappeared, darkness could become enormous. Step outside the house. Look up. The sky is filled with stars. More stars than most modern people ever see. There are no skyscrapers blocking them. No aircraft crossing the sky every few minutes. No artificial glow washing out the horizon. The Milky Way would be visible. The night sky would feel immense. And people lived beneath that sky every night. They knew its patterns. They watched the moon. They recognized familiar stars. They used the sky for navigation. They created stories around it. They wondered about it. They feared what they did not understand. And sometimes they simply admired it. Imagine standing alone outside a medieval village. No electricity, no engine, no music coming from a neighboring house, just wind, animals, a distant voice, and the stars. For a few seconds, perhaps, the world feels almost peaceful. But medieval life was not peaceful all the time. Disease existed, violence existed, poverty existed, war existed. Death was much more visible than it is for many people today. Families could lose children. Women could die in childbirth. Workers could be injured. Infections could become serious. A fever that seems minor today could become frightening. People understood death differently because death was closer. It was not something hidden away in hospitals and nursing homes. It could happen in the home, and when it did, the entire household felt it. Yet even here, we should avoid imagining medieval people as constantly terrified. People adapt to the world they live in. A medieval mother loved her child. A father worried about his family. Friends laughed together. People became old. They celebrated birthdays, marriages, births, religious festivals, successful harvests, and good news. They did not spend every day thinking about death. They lived. That is perhaps the most important word. They lived. And they had dreams. Not dreams only in the sense of sleep. Dreams for their children. Dreams of owning a house. Dreams of becoming a successful merchant. Dreams of traveling. Dreams of marrying. Dreams of having enough food. Dreams of becoming a craftsman. Dreams of seeing another city. The medieval world was not a world without ambition. A poor child could imagine becoming something different. An apprentice could imagine becoming a master. A merchant could dream of becoming wealthy. A nobleman could dream of gaining land. A king could dream of gaining a kingdom. People wanted things. People wanted better lives, and they acted accordingly. Late in the evening, the youngest children are becoming tired. One has fallen asleep against his mother's shoulder. Another is still fighting sleep. He insists that he is not tired. His eyes are almost closed. His mother smiles. Go to bed. He refuses. Then he yawns. Everyone laughs. Finally, he gives up. There is no separate children's bedroom in many ordinary medieval homes. Sleeping arrangements depend on the house and the family's wealth. People may sleep together in the same room. Beds are valuable. Mattresses may be stuffed with straw or other materials. Blankets and coverings provide warmth. A wealthy household has better bedding. A poor household makes do with what it has. The child lies down. The room becomes quieter. The fire burns lower. One by one, people stop talking. The day is ending. But before we sleep, there is one more place we should visit. The castle. Not because the castle represents the whole medieval world. It does not. But because from a distance, the castle dominates the imagination. Stone walls, towers, battlements, a gate, perhaps a moat, perhaps a banner moving in the wind. At night, the castle looks different. The torches along the walls create small circles of orange light. Guards walk along the battlements. Their boots strike the stone. They look out into the darkness. What are they watching for? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps everything. A fire in the distance. A group of travelers. An animal. An approaching army. A messenger. A guard may stand for hours and see nothing unusual. This is one of the less glamorous truths about medieval castles. Much of castle life was waiting for visitors, waiting for meals, waiting for orders, waiting for messages, waiting for danger, waiting for morning. Inside the castle, the Lord's household is also settling down. The great hall is quieter. Earlier, it may have been filled with conversation. Now, people are leaving. Servants clean. Someone carries away dishes. Someone checks the fire. Someone prepares beds. The castle is not always a romantic place filled with knights drinking wine beside roaring fireplaces. It is a working household. Food must be prepared. Animals must be cared for. Clothing must be maintained. Repairs must be made. Messages must be delivered. Accounts must be kept. People must be fed. A large household is an enormous machine of human labor, and most of that labor is invisible. When we look at a castle from the outside, we see stone. But stone does not cook dinner. Stone does not clean floors. Stone does not carry water. People do. Somewhere in the castle, a servant finally sits down. She is exhausted. She has been working since early morning. She has carried water, prepared food, cleaned, carried messages, helped with clothing, and now she has a few quiet minutes. She looks at the fire. For the first time all day, nobody is asking her to do anything. She closes her eyes. Perhaps she thinks about home. Perhaps she thinks about someone she loves. Perhaps she is simply tired. History may never record her name, but she lived, and she mattered. The medieval world was built by millions of people whose names have disappeared. Their hands built the roads. Their hands grew the food. Their hands made the clothes. Their hands shaped the metal. Their hands carried the water. Their hands raised the children. Their hands built the churches. Their hands built the castles. And when they disappeared, another generation took their place. Midnight approaches. The town is almost silent. The baker is asleep. The blacksmith is asleep. The farmer is asleep. The merchant is asleep. The child who refused to go to bed is finally sleeping deeply. The guards remain awake. A few travelers are still on the road. A monk is awake somewhere, perhaps preparing for prayer, and the fire in countless homes is slowly becoming ash. The medieval world is sleeping, but not completely. It never does. There is always someone awake, someone working, someone watching, someone traveling, someone giving birth, someone dying, someone praying, someone waiting for morning. And now, if you were standing on a hill above the town, you would see almost nothing. A few small lights, a handful of torches, perhaps a candle behind a shutter, the outline of the church, the dark mass of the castle. Beyond it, fields. Beyond the fields, forests. Beyond the forests, other villages, other towns, other people, and beyond all of them, a continent connected by roads, rivers, trade routes, faith, war, marriage, language, and stories. This is the medieval world. Not one world, really. Thousands of worlds, thousands of villages, thousands of households, millions of lives. Each person living inside a small circle of knowledge. Most people never travel very far. A journey of 50 miles could feel enormous. A foreign country might exist almost entirely as a rumor. A distant city might be known only by the stories of merchants. And yet the world was connected. Salt traveled, spices traveled, cloth traveled, iron traveled, ideas traveled, religions traveled, diseases traveled, people traveled, stories traveled, and slowly, over generations, these movements changed Europe. There is a temptation when looking at the Middle Ages to imagine a world that was frozen, as though nothing changed, as though people simply lived the same way for 1,000 years. But the Middle Ages were not static. They changed constantly. Cities grew, trade expanded, universities appeared, new technologies spread, agricultural methods improved, ships became more capable, books became more available, political powers rose and fell, languages evolved, buildings changed, clothing changed, food changed, ideas changed. The people living in the year 900 would not have experienced exactly the same world as people living in 1200, and people living in 1400 would recognize many things that those living centuries earlier would not. The Middle Ages were a long period of transformation, and the people living through it did not know where it was going, just as we do not know where our own world is going. Perhaps that is why history becomes so fascinating when you stop looking at it as a list of dates. A date tells you when something happened. A story lets you imagine what it felt like. Imagine being a young merchant leaving home for the first time. Imagine standing before a city gate. Imagine seeing a cathedral under construction and realizing that the building may not be finished during your lifetime. Imagine hearing a language you do not understand. Imagine walking into a market where you can smell spices that came from thousands of miles away. Imagine seeing a ship arriving after months at sea. Imagine receiving a letter from someone who left years ago. Imagine waiting for news. Imagine waiting for winter to end. Imagine hearing the church bells in the darkness. Imagine knowing that tomorrow will look almost exactly like today. And yet, without you realizing it, history is moving. The night becomes deeper. The fire in our imagined house is almost gone. There is only a faint red glow beneath the ashes. The family is asleep. The house is quiet. Outside, the wind moves through the street. A shutter creaks. A horse shifts its weight. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then silence. You look around the room. The people sleeping here will wake tomorrow. They will eat. They will work. They will complain. They will laugh. They will worry. They will make plans. They will grow older. One day, they will be gone. But tomorrow is not here yet. For now, they sleep. And so, for a little longer, we can leave them there, resting beside the dying fire, under the wooden roof, in a town that has no idea that centuries from now, people will look backward and call this time the Middle Ages. To the people inside this house, it is simply tonight, and tomorrow is simply tomorrow. But there is much more to discover, because the medieval world was not only made of houses and markets. There were monasteries hidden among forests. There were roads where merchants traveled for weeks. There were castles built on cliffs. There were villages that had existed for generations. There were cities growing rapidly around markets and rivers. There were students arriving at universities with books under their arms. There were sailors preparing to cross dangerous seas. There were pilgrims walking hundreds of miles. There were craftsmen whose work was so beautiful that people still admire it centuries later. There were women managing businesses, farms, households, workshops, and estates. There were children growing up in crowded cities. There were soldiers who spent more time waiting than fighting. There were monks copying books late into the night. There were ordinary people who never expected anyone to remember them, and yet their world became ours. So, when you think of the Middle Ages tonight, do not imagine only the knight in shining armor. Imagine the person who made the armor. Do not imagine only the castle. Imagine the workers who carried the stones. Do not imagine only the feast. Imagine the people who grew the grain. Do not imagine only the king. Imagine the thousands of people who made his kingdom function. History is not only about the people whose names survived. It is also about everyone whose names disappeared. And perhaps, in some strange way, those forgotten people are the ones we should listen to most carefully, because they were the majority. They lived ordinary lives. They woke before sunrise. They worked. They ate. They loved. They argued. They hoped. They feared. They dreamed. And eventually, they went to sleep, just like us. The first faint light of morning is beginning somewhere beyond the horizon. You cannot see it yet, but it is coming. The darkness will not last forever. Soon the baker will wake. The blacksmith will light his fire. The farmer will step outside. The market will begin again. The bell will ring. Children will run through the streets. The town will become noisy, and another medieval day will begin. But for now, there is still darkness. The fire is quiet. The house is still. The stars remain above the rooftops. And for one final moment, the medieval world is asleep. Good night, and welcome to the Middle Ages. Stories before sleep.